Hello, fellow fleet and mobility players. The Global New Car Assessment Program, Global NCAP, serves as a platform for cooperation among new car assessment programs around the world. So, promoting the universal adoption of the United Nations' most important motor vehicle safety standards worldwide. So, in the Americas, so as a region that we work with, Fleet Mobility Today, Global NCAP collaborates with NHTSA in the United States. So that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and also IIHS, which is the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And then down south in Latin America, it boasts Latin NCAP, which is the new car assessment program for the Latin America and Caribbean region. We're going to talk about Latin America today. So, and to help us understand what's going on in the region, I'm happy to introduce the Executive Secretary of Global NCAP and Latin NCAP, Alejandro Furas. So, hello, Alejandro. So, how's it going today?
Hi. Hi, Danielle. It's very nice meeting you again. Everything's going well and very excited about this interview.
Good, good. So, yeah, I met you a few years ago at an event. I believe it was in Brazil, and it's been a while. So, I believe you must talk at a lot of events, yeah?
Yeah, pretty often. I would say many times a year I visit different events, most of them related to fleet safety and fleet groups, and some of them are more related to road safety. But the network is expanding every year, so this is good for what we do, and the improvements are coming visible. So that's very good news.
Yeah, it's an important initiative you got going on there. And how long have you been involved with the NCAP family? Because
the Latin NCAP, we started Latin NCAP in 2010. So it's basically I'm from day zero, I would say, even before Latin NCAP was established. So I would say at least we are heading to the 15 years. And in Global NCAP, Global NCAP started a year later. So it's basically 14 years pretty soon.
Okay,
so it's pretty long time.
Okay, nice. Yeah, pretty. It's been quite a while. Let's get down to the question. So the first question I have for Alejandro is, could you explain Latin NCAP? The crash tests that you carry out, and give us an idea of how the star ratings are determined.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, it's important to say that what we do is basically a performance-based judgment. That means that we are testing different vehicles and different scenarios of crash scenarios, focusing on the performance, the capacity of them to protect people. We don't care how many airbags are in the car. We don't care where the car is produced. We don't care about the size. We just test the car and measure that the injuries in occupants or eventual pedestrians or vulnerable road users will stay below a certain limit. Yeah. When those injuries are at a minimum, I would say full integrity, is where the car is heading to the 5-star results. When you have critical injuries, you will see cars coming very close to the 0-star. From the concept perspective, what we're doing is basing our assessment in the injuries of the people inside and outside the car. We have at the moment 4 boxes or 4 aspects of assessment that each one of them is independent. One box for the adult occupant safety, another box for the child occupant safety, another box for the vulnerable road users or pedestrians, and a last box which is safety assist elements, or whatever helps drivers to drive better and mitigate or evade any kind of problems. Yeah. Each of these boxes are independently assessed, and the worst performing of those boxes is the one that is going to judge or bring the star rating to the result that we usually see around. Yeah. So you can be brilliant in all the boxes, but one of them is failing or not doing well, and it's going to justify a lower star rating in your vehicle. Another important thing to say is that we are testing always the most basic safety specification in the market. So the most basic passive safety specification available, that's what we're going to be testing in each model. Manufacturers know that, so it's for them to be aware of that and prepare their offer in the fleet they offer with a certain minimum equipment or minimum safety features in order to, when they are tested, not to perform that bad. Yeah. Something else to mention is that the aspects we are testing frontal test, we are testing side impacts, we are testing side pole impacts, which is basically when you're sliding on the side outside of the road and you hit a pole. Those tests, this is the most critical test scenario, and basically you can represent also a larger vehicle side crash as well. So because we are assessing the side head protection, which is the most delicate one. Then we are testing rear impact, which is neck protection, or we call it whiplash most of the times. We are testing side and front impact for child occupants. We are testing pedestrian protection in different impacts. So basically we take different body parts and we crush them into different areas of the front of the cars, and we assess how, let's say, how not good, but how soft they are in terms of how well they protect different body regions in each one of the impacts. So this information is on the side of the passive safety, and then we go for the safety assist box, where we are assessing electronic stability control, seatbelt reminders, blind spot detection, speed limitation devices, autonomous emergency braking systems, which is also assessed for the pedestrians and also for the low speed scenarios. And all of that altogether builds up the star ratings. Basically, the way we do it, we buy cars in Latin America and we export them to Germany, where we are performing the tests. Unfortunately, we don't have an independent crash lab in Latin America, and we have to bring them to Europe and test them in an independent crash laboratory to perform all the tests, which is, of course, another challenge we have to face with. From the concept, Daniel, it's important to mention it as a bottom line. A 5-star car, it's a car which offers pretty good overall protection, and as an equal level, you can understand a 5-star car as a car where you have no severe damages or no severe injuries. So whatever you have after the, crashing into a 5-star car, into the schemes of the test, then you will feel probably some pains or injuries, but temporarily they will not be permanent. On a 0-star car, it's highly likely that you will have high probabilities of life-threatening injuries, either to someone in the car or someone outside the car. This is basically a bottom line concept.
Yeah, and so yeah, it sounds like you really got it all well-round test. You test different angles of the car. So not only the driver, but the driver, the passenger, the kids in the back seat, maybe even the pedestrians. You said so. That's pretty good. And you're saying that so sometimes you need to bring some cars from Latin America to Germany to do the testing. My second question is, are cars in Latin America, like if you have the same model in Latin America and maybe the same model in Europe or the United States, are they less safe maybe in Latin America?
Well, we had plenty of examples in Latin America, unfortunately, where we have cars which are looking like the same models in the US, in Europe, and they do perform differently. They perform differently because they are built in a different way. They are constructed, the metal parts, in different way with some reinforcements missing, some procedures different, features, safety features that are not placed in the way they are placed for European or EU markets and US markets. And the same way we found critical differences in the kind of equipment. Sometimes we don't have the same equipment. Even we have found cases where you have the same production line and the cars are sourced from the same place, the same plant, and they do have critical differences in the construction. And it actually landed into very poor results. Now, the way to explain this or to prevent this happening, there are two ways. One, the first one is we always recommend that the people rely on the local NCAP test. So if it's a Latin NCAP, they need to be tested by Latin NCAP and not rely on other NCAP test results. And in that line, for example, Australian NCAP, they have a policy that the manufacturers cannot use their ratings. Their ratings are not valid outside their region of domain, basically Australia and New Zealand. Latin NCAP is implementing the same policy as from next year. So our results cannot be used outside the region. And last but not least, it's important to say that the reason why this happens, even if manufacturers swear to their own moms that this is always going to be the same car, it's always the same car, it's not the same car. And many times they are not bad intended. Sometimes they're not well informed by inside the company of the lack of certain quality controls, the lack of certain procedures, the lack of certain features that basically the production area are implementing without notifying properly the other levels of the company. And we have seen that repeatedly, unfortunately, many, many times. So it's not surprising. We have seen it in different fields, not just for Latin America, we've seen it for India as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about the other, just recently that accomplishing safe driving conditions. Okay, you work with safe vehicles, but in order to keep the safe driving conditions for your employees, I say employees because I work with fleets, so corporate fleet. There are other things that are also needed. So, because I think I saw you speaking at another event or something like that. other things to help keep your fleet safe. So like, I think like transportation infrastructure or legislation or stuff like that. Could you give us an idea of what else do we need to make sure that our drivers and pedestrians are safe?
Yeah, let's put it at this level. From the perspective of a fleet, what you can do is supply the best or the safest possible fleet available. Yeah, and we always have recommendations for that, and we can go into details. But as you asked me, I'm just trying to step away from the car or the vehicle itself. There is the safe system approach globally is understood as that we have to develop roads and vehicles that are capable of preventing serious injuries and deaths of very distracted drivers. So focusing or thinking things from that way, of course, it's like a system. You need to have a certain relationship between the infrastructure and the vehicle to prevent that any misuse or any distracted driving or whatever is going to end up in a tragedy. Now, of course, there is a part of the legislation in terms of regulations, but once again, as a fleet manager or as a fleet, you can always exceed regulations. Don't expect governments to regulate. Don't expect governments to legislate. This is taking too much time, and it's proven that it's hasn't been very successful in the last years. So the bigger changes are coming more from the private sector, because you can implement your own training for your own fleet managers. You can retrofit, or let's say select the safest possible fleet on your side. What it's out of your hands a little bit, it's the infrastructure. There's not too much you can do because you're using a public infrastructure. It's not in your hands as a fleet manager. But as a fleet manager, you can always choose safer roads. So if you're going from A to B, try to choose the safest possible way. There might be a shorter one, definitely, but probably you can choose another one, might be a little bit longer, but it's going to offer you, from the infrastructure perspective, a better choice. As much as the fleet managers and companies can contribute in local cities or in the government to implement and push and promote safer infrastructures, welcome, do it. These are the things. Infrastructure is something that is, I would say, less under control from the fleet management than what it is training and selecting safer vehicles. Yeah. So we have seen this happening many times, that when you have to choose for going from one city to another one, or delivery route or whatever, choose safer roads by the infrastructure criteria, then it's going to make definitely a good outcome. Probably it's not going to be the fastest way to go. Probably it's going to take a little bit longer. There's energy efficiency as well, discussion on board. It's going to collide with choosing longer roads. But it's all about, when you're focusing on safety and health, this has to be also taken into consideration. So that's, from our understanding, what can be done on this side.
Yeah, like in Latin America, there are a lot of roads that are really not in very good condition compared to like United States. When I drive over here,
I agree.
Except for like in Sao Paulo, it's pretty good in the Sao Paulo city, in the big city, in this area, in this state is better. But like in Brazil and
let me tell you,
Mexico,
let me tell you something,
like
Daniel. Let me tell you something. In Sweden, which is one of the countries leading in what in terms of road safety, and they have a very low number of fatalities every year. And definitely they're not driving all Volvos around. Definitely it's not the case. There's a lot of Volvos, but not all of them are Volvos. And they have a very poor infrastructure. If you compare their infrastructure to what we have in Latin America, it's not far away. We are not that distant from the infrastructure they have. They have better vehicles in terms of safety, yes. And they have discovered, the Swedish government have discovered that training and let's say the aspect of the driver itself, and focusing on that, it's not going to change the reality. And they are in a very similar reality that what we are in Latin America, a very limited infrastructure. And they have also the challenge of the weather, which we don't have. In most Latin America, there are some areas which, yes, south of the South Cone, yes, but not everywhere. And they still manage to keep the fatalities very low. There's a lot of learning that we can take from the Swedish population as well.
I'm curious about the star rating. So you mentioned earlier, but I want to find out, if you could give us an idea of update us on some of the latest crash tests that happened, this year in 2024 in Latin America. Can you give us an example of some of the models?
We have good and bad, as we always say. We have good performance and bad performance. Unfortunately we haven't published so many cars this year up on this stage, but we have over 10 models to publish. So over to come at least another 8 models between now until the end of the year. We had recently published last week the Chevrolet Groove, which is the best-selling SUV in Chile. Has been best-selling for a long time, and it was rated with 0 stars. On the other side, we have the Chevrolet Montana, which is a very small pickup, double cab from Chevrolet, rating 3 stars. But the highlight of this car is that it's offering 6 airbags as standard and really good safety performance. The reason why they didn't achieve 5 stars is because they need to add ADAS technologies like autonomous emergency braking systems and all that, which is not available in the car. And we also have recently published, also last week, the Volkswagen T-Cross, which is a small SUV, which is rated on a 5-star level. So we have, let's say, from compact vehicles that we have in the region, these 4 cars are pretty significant results all the way. From what we have published last years, we have relevant examples, like, for example, the Hyundai HB20, which is a small compact hatchback and sedan version. Both of them were rated with 3 stars after we published them with 0 stars. So we first rated 0 stars. They improved the airbag system, so they put 6 airbag standard. We tested again, they showed improvements. We also had cases like this last year with other models, and we are seeing, for example, a long time ago, we tested Renault's Renault Duster, which is a, I would say, popular SUV, and it was very poorly rated, and the manufacturer decided to implement 6 airbags as a standard. And we have seen all these improvements happening as a voluntary basis because there's no government pushing them in Latin America to have 6 airbags. There's no regulation. So there is already a very good reaction. And there are many other news I was just at the top of my mouth to come and tell you, but I cannot talk about them because they are coming in the next publications, and I will be breaking the embargo.
Oh,
but there are a lot of other good news coming up. I can't.
Okay.
I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah, I had a question.
I promise from now until the end of the year, we're going to have a lot more good results. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had a question about so sometimes they get poor ratings and then like they come back later and then they get a better rating, like you said, adding airbags, gaining more stars. And about like, so is it like after like a year, or how long does it do you do the test? And they like because you kind of gave us some examples. I mean, Hyundai or something like that.
Usually we test the car. Manufacturer knows the results. They know what's happening. And they immediately trigger the procedure to improve the car. Now, sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We have the case of the Hyundai, which was updated to 6 airbags in probably less than 6 months. So it depends on the stage of development. The main idea, Daniel, is that we have a lot of manufacturers that they already have in the pipeline, a lot of projects responding to Latin NCAP demands. And sometimes we catch them with, I would say, still old models. Yeah. And therefore, for those manufacturers, since we tested until we have a new car, it's basically a short term. So it's not very long. So you see the improvements from 1 year to the next one. In other cases, when you catch them with quite a new model with a poor performance, it takes them quite a cycle of that model to see improvements. So it takes about 2-3 years to see improvements in those cars. And sometimes, even when there's a short way to improve, it takes a long time to decide to improve. So there's a decision-making process in the company. It has to be approved by the board and approved by the rest of the level of the company, and implement the technical solutions. Technical solutions normally are quite easy, I would say. The political decision and how to implement it probably takes a bit longer time. So we have seen that the timing is very variable. Normally, manufacturers, and I can say that comfortably now, most of car manufacturers in the region are responding to Latin NCAP proposals, and they are already aiming the new fleets to, let's say, at least a 3-star performance in Latin NCAP, which is already a good, I would say, a reasonable, acceptable, good level of safety in the cars as a standard. So that's already good news. Some of them are a little bit, falling behind, but I think sooner or later they will all join into the group.
Yeah, I have fleet management groups in Latin America. I have another one specifically for Brazil, also in North America, in the United States. And some of them they put, they like the ones in Latin America, they use your star ratings, and they only accept, I don't know, 4 stars or whatever and up or something like that. And but some of them they're talking to me, and then they say that the fleet managers tell me that they want to see more vehicles being tested. Of course, it's difficult to test, all of them, of course. But what do you think is needed to make this happen, so that we can get more vehicles being tested?
I'm so pleased with this question. You can't imagine. Latin NCAP, it's an NGO. We're a charity basically, so we have very limited funding. The way normally it works is that with the limited funds we have, we can only test a few cars, but we don't want to limit the information. So we have the possibilities that anyone, any organization, any individual can approach Latin NCAP and say, I want to contribute with that model, and we can test this or that model, or just bring the funding to open more models. But let me give you a vast vision, a larger vision. First of all, we want to test everything available in the markets. There's nothing else we want to do more than that. Yeah, but that's not possible due to the funding. Now, the way that we can make that shift or change is, for example, by a labeling program, governments demanding or pushing for labeling, that the cars must be labeled with a star rating, not each model, each unit, but just information-wise. If you go to the US, you will see that most of the cars are tested by NHTSA, and you buy a new car and there is a large page sticks in the window, in the windscreen, and normally there's in the middle the star rating. Yeah, so that's what we are aiming. That should be happening in Latin America. Probably not for all the cars, but at least for the top 30, I think it makes sense. And governments, we try to work with governments to make it happen. But from the fleet side, there's a lot that can be done. And this is my call to your audience. Let's say that if you from now on, you say, I'm not going to buy any car which is not tested. Let's leave aside how many stars. Yeah, I'm not buying a car which is not tested by Latin NCAP. I don't mind if it's 0, 3, 2, 1, 5, whatever it is. That's already a starting point. That's already making a change. And it's already making a change in what we are seeing now, because manufacturers are voluntarily coming to Latin NCAP to be tested, because fleet managers are telling them, if you're not tested, I'm not going to buy your car. Yeah. Then it's a later decision from the board of the company. It's a later decision to say, are we allowing 2 stars? Are we starting on 3 stars? Are we going to be a 5-star? Whatever it is. Yeah. But I think that's a very important and relevant starting point. At least don't buy cars which are not tested. And there is a side comment on this. There is a large list of malfunctions we have discovered in testing in Latin America that have been later on fixed. And if we wouldn't have tested those cars, those problems wouldn't have been visible. And that is actually explained by the lack of regulation systems in Latin America, lack of proper regulatory systems in Latin America. And we are somehow playing both games. We are somehow playing the information, consumer information, at the same time that we are controlling whatever is being sold. It's not comfortable. This has to be done with governments. Latin America is built up in a structure, as I said at the beginning, like exactly copying Euro NCAP, which is a common interest of the civil society and the governments. Governments, they have a place in the board of Latin NCAP. They need to be sitting there in Latin NCAP. They need to be part of Latin NCAP. This is I would say, public goods organization. It's not what we are doing just for us or for the consumers. It has to be seen from both sides, and it needs the involvement of the governments. And probably fleet managers can help as well. They can push governments to say, why don't you just become part of Latin NCAP as a government? And we have everyone sitting around the table. So I would say this would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna wrap up with that question, because so fleet managers, so you heard it from Alejandro here. So in Latin America, but also outside of Latin America, wherever you're at, use these crash tests to kind of determine what vehicle you want to select. And I want to say just thank you to Alejandro for giving us this insight. Thanks a lot, Alejandro. And for the fleet managers, and also if you're just buying a car for your family, remember that safety is, of course, of utmost importance, and when selecting your vehicle models. So thanks again, Mr. Furas, and Global NCAP platform, and all the collaborating companies for giving much needed insight to the market. Make sure you make the right decision, fleet managers. Okay, Daniel Bland, Fleet Mobility Today, signing out again.
Thank you very much.
Drive safely, everyone. Bye-bye.